I found chapter 23 of this book interesting about Shakespeare. This is from the biography of Shakespeare. And this chapter deals with the type of person or personality, character. So we're talking about what kind of personality, character does a great poet and writer have, perhaps? What would you think he has? We're going to find out. Sir, I shall study preserving. Chapter 23. On his first arrival in London, how did he appear to his contemporaries? When in the taming of the shrew, Lucio leaves Pisa to, quote, plunge into Padua, that, quote, nursery of arts, he arrives expectantly and, quote, with Socrates seeks to quench his thirst, unquote. The young Shakespeare was eager for experience, and with all of its forms, in some way he wished for satiety in the manifold life of London. In his fancy or fantasy he might, quote, hear sweet discourse, converse with noblemen, the two gentlemen of Verona. His expiring spirit might there find its true setting. He also wished to test himself in the forcing house of thought and drama. This youthful ambition emerges in the most surprising context. Quote, in Antony and Cleopatra, Antony remarks of the morning that it resembles, quote, the spirit of a youth that means to be of note. Was he then eager for the fame that, as the king of Navarine puts it, quote, all hunt after in their lives, love's labor lost? Many have assumed it, but the fame of an actor or dramatist was in this period a highly perishable commodity. He would have felt the mental power of the city, however, and with it an inkling of his own destiny. We might remark upon Shakespeare's intense and overwhelming energy. It manifests itself at all stages of his career, and in his youth it must have been irrepressible. We might also remark upon his buoyancy and inward uneasiness of spirit. As an actor, he was trained to be quick and nimble, but that vitality was an essential part of his being. The images of his plays are filled with flight and with swift action, with movement and lightness. He is the poet of speed and agility. His characters are not of the study or the library, but of the busy and active world. He is a drama of the sudden movement or change, and one of his most powerful images is that of the lightning strike, quote, which doth cease to be ere one can say it lightens, from Romeo and Juliet. All the myriad imagery from the social as well as the natural world suggests that he was a man of preternatural alertness, and he was known, like the characters within his comedies, for the quickness of his repartee. John Aubrey, acquiring his information from the theatrical Beeston family, noted that Shakespeare possessed quote, a very ready, pleasant, smooth wit, unquote, and also scribbled down that, quote, he was a handsome, well-shaped man, unquote. Actors, with the exception of those who specialized in comic roles, were expected to be handsome and well-shaped. No remarkable young man or woman is devoid of energy, but many are also beset by self-consciousness and embarrassment. It is the price of an eminence. There are many passing references in Shakespeare's drama to blushes and flushed faces where emotions suffice the countenance in unanticipated ways. It is almost unwitting habit of Shakespeare to include such details. Charles Lamb mentions his, quote, self-watchfulness, unquote. There are also references in his dramas to stage fright. Everyone remarked upon his sweetness and courtesy. He was variously called Cuchillo, quote, generous, and most often gentle. Despite spiteful allusions to his past as a law writer and a country schoolmaster, he was generally considered to be well-bred and indeed, quote, gentle, unquote. Not meaning mild or tender in the modern sense, but possessing the virtues and attributes of a gentleman. He would later demonstrate to the world that he was indeed well bred, unquote. Gentility implies instinctive courtesy towards those of inferior rank or position, pleasing modesty towards those of equal status, and proper respect towards superiors. Bernard Shaw put the point differently when he speculated that Shakespeare, quote, was a very civil gentleman who got round men of all classes, unquote. The vogue for Castiglione's La Courtier, published in English translation in 1561, had not yet passed. It was a manual of civil conduct to which all gentlemen, including lawyers and the wealthier merchants, subscribed. It is clear from many allusions that Shakespeare had read it. His own plays have indeed been read as a, quote, pattern book, unquote, in courteous speech. That is why he was described to his contemporaries as mellifluous. What was the word mellow mean? Mellows?
Honey.
Honey. He's in speech, he speaks with a honey tongue. Mellifluous. And honey-tongued. He's honey-tongued. He speaks nice to people. Castiglione himself recommends one who is, quote, in company with men and women of all degrees, and who hath in him a certain sweetness and so comely demeanor that whoso speaketh with him, or yet beholdeth him, must needs bear him an affection for ever, unquote. Did this come to Shakespeare instinctively, as most have surmised, or was it in part the result of practice and education? Question mark. This view of his character was in any case established very early when, in 1709, Nicholas Rowe depicted him as, quote, a good-natured man of great sweetness in his manners and a most agreeable companion, unquote. This comes as a surprise to those romantics who believe that he must have shared the horrors of Macbeth or the torments of Lear. He is not jealous of Othello, nor rambunctious Falstaff, yet in the moment of conceiving them, Sophocles, the author of some of the most desperate Greek tragedies, was known as the happy playwright. Authors, at least, when they are in the company of other people, can be most, quote, unlike, unquote, their work. And Shakespeare generally was in company. He was not an age of privacy. It was not an age of privacy. John Aubrey also passed on the information that he was, quote, very good company, unquote. He was affable and convivial, according to contemporary